Hi and welcome to Before the Bar. I have with me today Mr. Aayush Mohata from Khaitan Co. Ayush sir specializes in capital markets. Hi Ayush sir, thank you for joining me here. Can we start with a brief background about your journey from GNLU to your LL.M, joining SEBI and eventually moving to KCO?
Sure. It's been a long while. I have graduated from GNLU in 2010. So that's more than 15 years ago. And it's been a fairly straightforward journey from there. But the year that I did graduate in, that period was fairly tumultuous. All of us know it was the peak of the subprime lending crisis. So, in terms of the economy, in terms of the job market, things were not they weren't really looking up. It was fairly bleak. That is predominantly why I thought of pursuing an LLM immediately after college. In today's day and age, that may not be as recommended because it may be more prudent for you to have a bit of experience into which area would you want to specialize further and study further in. So these days, we do have most of our senior associates or associates who have at least 3 to 4 years of experience who prefer to go down the LLM route. And with a good law firm on your CV, that probably helps you to get into better colleges as well. We have a few colleagues who've joined Cambridge or who've gotten into Harvard as well. So that is something that students who are getting out of colleges in the near future should probably consider, regardless of whether it's a law firm life that you've chosen or whether it's in the corporate field in in-house roles or with banks or with multinationals. It may be more prudent to first and foremost understand a few basics which are more useful in practical applications such as contract laws, real estate laws, depends on which sector you work in or find yourself in. And after that, pursuing an LLM. In my case, that at that time probably was not the option. Also, I was the first lawyer in the family, come from more of a business background. So didn't really have that much of a guidance as to what should be the future course of action. Because of the job market, we thought LLM would be more fruitful. So then I went to London and did a master's in corporate and commercial laws from Queen Mary, that is University of London. And I came back in 2011. But even after having come back, I realized that just a LLM on your CV doesn't really catapult you into getting more doors open. I was fortunate that SEBI at that very time has come out with a couple of slots for people that they wanted on an urgent basis for the legal team. And I believe there was about 2,500 odd applications, out of which 20 of us got shortlisted for interview rounds. And all of those 20 were foreign LLM holders. And out of that, 2 of us got selected. And that's how I got into SEBI. Now, SEBI, being a regulator, a government body, has a very different outlook on most things as opposed to what you're taught in law school. Here, you're not client centric. Your focus is investor protection, the larger good, the greater good. So I was part of the LAD, which is the Legal Affairs Department, part of the policy drafting team. I was involved a bit in the insider trading code development at that time under Justice Sodi, as well as a lot of other different evolving security law landscapes, such as the CIS regulations and settlement mechanism, etc. SEBI functions as how would I put a cohesive department of a variety of people. Your MBAs and your CFOs, your CAs, your CFAs are predominantly focused in the corporate finance department, which is what we typically end up dealing with in the capital market side. Those are the people who review the offer documents or companies which are potentially trying to get listed or coming out with any kind of fundraising options, including takeovers, buybacks, etc. So that's your CAs and MBAs. Whereas the lawyers are typically attached to either the enforcement team, which is dealing with litigation matters before SEBI or before SAT or High Court in the original jurisdiction. Alternatively, you're in the legal affairs department, which deals with policy matters, where there are questions posed to SEBI, where an interpretation has to be taken, where there are a lot of stakeholders involved, committees are set up, something as basic as a definition of a promoter to deciding what should a company be able to do with its security framework. So that's where the lawyers are typically concentrated on. And the only other role that I think lawyers are also allowed to get into is attaching themselves with whole time members or the adjudicating officers to assist them in drafting the orders. So, fairly a limited role, but a very, very different outlook. Now, that being said, the reason I shifted out of SEBI after just about approximately 2 odd years is I always thought of that to be more of a stepping stone, in all honesty. Ending up in a law firm, or at least all my peers burning the midnight oil, slogging it away, as opposed to SEBI, which in comparison could be considered to be a slightly more comfortable life. But yeah, that's changed. This is again 12 to 13 years ago. The SEBI, as we know today, is as professional as it can be, which is a really, really great thing for the regulator to be more involved, be more proactive. And that's the SEBI that we know today. So from there, after having SEBI on my CV, honestly, that helped open a lot of doors. All the top law firms that I applied to came back with interview calls, and applications were forwarded accordingly. And of those, I happened to select KCO. Khaitan is when I joined in about August 2014. So that's also been nearly 11 years now. And I joined directly in the capital markets team, or at that time it was known as the security, corporate, and capital markets team. We were a much smaller outfit back then. And we used to do takeovers, a bit of corporate advisory, as well as capital markets. Capital markets in those days was still picking up. There used to be 3 to 4 listings on a good quarter, as opposed to the 15, 20 listings that we have today, along with the number of firms that have increased today. Back then, it used to be the undivided Amarchand Mangaldas, us, SNR, Trilegal, AZB, a little bit more of GSA's involvement as well. But then that's largely about it. Just 5 to 6 firms. Today, that scope has also expanded drastically. So there are much more opportunities for students who are looking at capital markets as an option. There are smaller firms who do a little bit more niche work. So even if you are not able to directly get into a larger law firm or a tier one law firms, as how people categorize it, that's not a reason to lose heart. A couple of years of relevant experience, even in a smaller outfit, can easily catapult you into a much bigger team if that is your intention. So that's how I got into KCO. And people often ask me as to why did I never, contemplate a move? Because it's fairly evident that in the law firm circuit, people jumping around is a common occurrence. But I never felt the need to. The monetary compensation was never a concern. The promotions were never a concern. The quality of work was never a concern. And having Khaitan's brand at the back allowed us to do some really marquee transactions. We've grown from a team of about 15 to 20 people today to about a 70, 80 odd lawyer team, right? That time, probably the partnership was 4 to 5 partners. Today, it's about 15 odd partners as well. So we've seen significant growth. There's been a lot of effort that we've put into team building, and we're very proud of the way Khaitan has come up to where it is in the capital market space. That's largely my journey.
I want to talk more about your journey at Khaitan. But it sounds so
Hmm.
exciting that you were got to witness capital markets growing from a small segment to now doing so many listings. But before that, can you give us some key experiences about your LLM, and then how you got into SEBI? Like, did you do any extensive prep for it, or was it a last moment decision?
Honestly, I never imagined working in a government outfit. Uh, it so happened to be that I was out hunting for profiles which would be more suitable to corporate law. The profiles that I was getting were rather more towards general corporate law, and my focus was always a little more towards securities. During my LLM, I had the benefit of some of the faculty members at University of London back then, who were focused on a lot of aspects, the niche aspects of securities law, such as takeover. My dissertation was also on a comparative of the takeover regulations between India, UK, Australia, Germany, Japan. So that is where my interest really lied. Never envisaged capital markets would be where I would end up, but I think I got there fairly early in my journey, and I realized I liked it as well. So yeah, LLM as an experience was fantastic. I don't think I would regret a single second of that experience. Yes, you are put out there in the world. There is not so much of monitoring on students in the master's degree as we would have in our Indian institutions, right? So you're sort of left on your own and expected to meet those criteria. But that also meant that you have to be prepared that much harder. Every class would have been for 2 hours per week, uh, each every subject, and there would be a lot of prep material that you would have had to prep for before you attended that class. Otherwise, you'd be lost. And there's no spoon feeding. People, the lecturers, the professors there, they would talk on concepts. In India, our teaching style is slightly different. For example, if you're studying contract law or constitutional law, you'll read a litany of judgments, both dissenting opinions as well as favorable opinions, as well as some landmark cases which you would sort of mug up. Mugging up was a big part of Indian education system, at least back then. I'm not sure if it's changed much now. But then understanding something conceptually is what expands your horizon. uh, if I may, I'm not really sure how to explain that, but your brain opens up to that extent, right? You are able to apply yourself after having analyzed something. They had open book exams for some of those subjects, but the questions that came, even if those questions were given to you a week before, unless and until you've actually done the effort of going through hours and hours of the books that are there available in the library, probably would be very difficult for you to understand the nuances that is required. And the marking system there is on an average basis. For example, you'll have 5 questions. Each 5 question is of 100 marks each. So if you do well on 4 and do really bad on 1, that'll bring down your average. So you have to be consistent. Consistency was key, at least in the British system of higher education. But the number of people that you meet from different geographies, different jurisdictions, their perspectives, their takes, and everybody's out there to do a master, so they have a fundamental base in law. That was a very enriching experience. Plus, London was a wonderful city to live in. Absolutely no complaints there. So yeah, that was 1.5 years, and I had a ball of a time there. And after having come back, SEBI happened. Khaitan journey, when it started off, honestly, I struggled a bit. It was a steep learning curve because capital markets as a subject, as you know, is not really taught in schools. We've started an initiative with a few courses. I'm sure other law firms also have a few courses that people have set up to at least bring about more awareness in the student community as to this also being a field of law. Arbitration, competition law, IP, when these were upcoming, there were focused modules being taught in law schools. Capital markets, unfortunately, as a subject, is very difficult to teach as a semester subject because it is disclosure based, plus it is evolving basis market developments. The regulator is cognizant of what the market requires, and therefore the law keeps changing. When we had joined, the DIP guidelines of 2009 were in effect, right? Then the ICDR came in, and in 2018 the ICDR got overhauled again. So the law has been changing, and it's not just one law. There are multitude of SEBI regulations, along with Companies Act, along with foreign investment laws that you have to be cognizant of because those play key aspects in a transaction. I had the benefit of working with Mr. Sudhir Basi. He joined Khaitan in 2013, and he's probably the only exception to the regular lawyers cohort that we have in capital markets across firms. Mr. Basi has been a banker all his life. He was an MD at Morgan Stanley when he chose to switch his profiles and join us as a head of practice. And he's still continuing with us, and he's been a knowledge trove for us to learn. Lawyers sometimes tend to look at the black letter of law, analyze it, and then give an answer to the client. So what Mr. Basti taught us was that it's not just that you have to understand the practical application also. If a client has an issue, a mere this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, it may not be the suggestion. Sometimes there has to be a middle way. Sometimes there has to be going around the law, talking to the regulator, seeing if amendments can be brought in, exceptions can be brought in, all of that, right? So that framework opens up the way you approach things. That was one of my key takeaways from my early days in KCO. And then we had the benefit of Mr. Abhimanyu Bhattacharya, who joined us as a senior partner from Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. That was also in my early years. Abhimanyu joined about, I think, in 2015. And these are the two people that have always, led the team, and we've got to learn a lot from them. So that has been formative part of my Khaitan journey. And then sort of all my seniors that I've worked with, Shubha, you, Aditya, Mathur, these are the guys that I've really worked with over the last decade on a very, very close basis. And that is how I think we've developed, because it is not something that can be taught. It's not a book that can be given to you and can be taught to you. There are concepts, uh, being a promoter, being a contribution, the procedure of how an IPO takes place, what are the listing compliances to look at, so on and so forth. Initially, as an associate, I would say for the first 3 to 4 years, it's difficult. Difficult because the work that you do, which would predominantly involve diligencing, as well as documentation may seem a little repetitive at times, because every transaction you end up doing largely the same thing. But that being said, for us to take an associate and bring him up to an SA level, which takes about 4 odd years in a time span, and for that person to be then able to argue on the agreements, the negotiation aspects, or the finer aspects of a transaction, your fundamentals need to be clear. So by rote, by doing that over and over again of the documentation, the diligence aspects, your fundamentals get clear, and then you are, pulled up to a level where then you can effectively argue, negotiate with the other side, with foreign counsels, with the bankers, or with the corporates. Uh, the requirements of law, the larger framework. Also, you are then up to dated as to what updated as to what SEBI wants, because SEBI's requirements keep changing. And fortunately or unfortunately, the framework that we work within is not just law. SEBI gives guidances, SEBI gives directions, SEBI gives observations. They may not be in form of codified law. So you need to know how the regulator will react before you give an advice to your client. And the clients that we fortunately deal with are premium, top of the line marquee clientele, right? So they also have a much deeper understanding of where practicality marries the regulation. So that's largely what I would say my journey's been like. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. A steep learning curve, and of course, we still go to school every day, as Sudisa likes to call us. We're still students, and we keep learning every day.
So, sir, two questions on your very long and fun journey here. You mentioned Sudhir, sir. You mentioned Abhimanyu, sir. So, first, what is one thing that you've learned from them that you have imbibed in your work? Second, how does one find mentors in today's day and age? Like me being a law student, how can I find mentors who will, guide me through the journey? And so, second, you mentioned the GNLU initiatives. Of course, is one of the most effective initiatives. I've been a part of it. How can one, if we want to, as students, prepare for a capital markets role? How is the preparation like if we want to start ourselves?
Okay, so let me start with the latter first. I would say it would be premature for students to get into capital markets or corporate internships before they have done Companies Act as a theoretical subject. We do get a lot of applications from first years, second years who've not really, who's still reading jurisprudence. So it's a next level. And also, not everybody finds the nuances of Companies Act interesting. If your bent is more towards appearing before court or, any other area of law, be it IP, competition, so on and so forth, that is a fundamental requirement that I would say, because at the end of the day, Companies Act is the guiding fundamental piece based on which everything else is built around. If your interest does lie in that area, please try at least to be clear on the concepts. While yes, even Companies Act itself is a developing legislation, but slower, much slower than what other legislations are. So the concepts of, directorship, shareholding, the voting rights, corporate governance, all of the multitude of facets that a Companies Act can provide to you would be your fundamental basis for preparation. Once that is clear, once you understand what a corporate entity is all about, how a corporate entity functions, then you move on to the various aspects of a corporate life, which is listing or there being any other type of a combination. Even if somebody is interested in an M&A or a listed M&A space, which would also sort of be correlative to capital markets or securities to that extent, their understanding of these principles can also come only once there is sufficient basis under companies law. So that is something that I would recommend for students to first and foremost be prioritizing on their list. Courses like GNLU initiative that KCO has in relation to the securities market course is slightly of an advanced nature. I would recommend fourth years and fifth years to probably consider that, maybe third years also, subject to them at least having had corporate law 1, corporate law 2, based on each university, whatever their structure is. But then after having done that, then you move on to the SEBI framework, because there needs to be an understanding of how a company can be capitalized. Why is it required for a company to access public funds? What all is the procedure required for a company to get into a capital market space in terms of size, in terms of scale, in terms of business? And then to monetize or unlock their investment potential and give returns to its shareholders. That is something which people would probably find a little advanced. And that is the reason we would recommend people in the fourth year or fifth year to try their hand at securities law or capital markets. And your first question was, what did I get to learn from these two mentors? From Sudhir sirs, primarily, I think it is going into the detail of the legal principle. Even if you're looking up a query from a legal perspective, don't just look at the law, look at the jurisprudence, look at the thought process of the regulator or whatever material that you can find as to why that law came into being. If a particular position was taken, you read up on that first before you analyze the law, which gives you a more clarity of thought so that you're on sync with the person who's eventually going to administer that law. And therefore, your advice can be that nuanced. And from Abhimanyu was discipline, approach to work, client handling, meticulousness, drafting from a lawyering perspective. So something funny was that when I joined from SEBI, my tone of emails was very different because as a regulator, I am used to a more authoritative tone, right? And as soon as you jump into a firm life where it's client facing, there has to be those pleas and requests, and you have to mind the P's and Q's to that effect. So those were the few different aspects which were interesting. But yes, both of these people have broadened our horizons as to how to approach a problem before you take an advice to a client. So those are the few aspects that I've learned from them.
And so, in today's day and age, how can we law students find a mentor
Hmm.
who can guide us through all of this?
Okay, so first and foremost, as a law student, getting a mentor is not that easy. Let's be fair. There are hundreds of law students, and uh, people who are experts in that field probably won't have that much time to take up law students and mentor them. So your mentoring typically starts once you join the profession. Because if I'm not mistaken, each and every field, at least in a law firm setup, is on the job learning. Yes, you are equipped with theoretical knowledge, knowledge of case laws, knowledge of jurisprudence from your law school days. But when you actually come and apply it, life becomes very different. And mentor may not only be a senior partner. I got to learn a lot from my immediate seniors who themselves may have been associates, SAs, PAs in their days. That is where your on the ground learning comes up. Somebody who's reviewing my work will be able to give feedback as to where I went wrong or what could have I done better. Taking that feedback is a mentorship in itself. Yes, a more macro perspective can always be gained by the people who are at the top, because while they may not be really involved in your day-to-day activities, there will be a hierarchy system there. But guidance in terms of what to do or what not to do can always be provided by them. And sometimes you have to just observe and learn, right? You may not always be handed it out on a plate. This isn't a profession where we can suggest that you read these 10 books, read these 10 laws, and then you're prepared. So therefore, there are nuances which will be brought up. You'll do a portion. So the way capital market works is there is an offer document that we prepare, which has a lot of chapters. Now, these chapters affect different aspects of a company, right? From how the company has taken loans, what is its management, what is its board like, how it has been capitalized, what is its business, how is its financial performance, what are the risks of its business, so on and so forth. As you keep doing each of these chapters, you learn and keep clearing up your fundamentals. Wherever you have issues, doubts, questions, queries, you raise it to the relevant people. And the best part about a client interfacing role is you don't only learn from your seniors or the people you work with. You learn a lot from people across the table, be it the other side counsel, be it the merchant bankers that you work with, who give you a more practical aspect about how what corporate finance is all about. The clients, sometimes their problems stem from a fact which you may not have thought about, right? So your remedy also needs to stem from a fact that has not been thought about before. So essentially, keeping a broader mind or an open mind with a broader horizon is what you would look at. Mentors can be found at every juncture. Some of us are lucky to have found it at the place that we land up in. Some may or may not find that immediately. So you should have the ability to look out. I wouldn't say just for the brand of a law firm or just because you managed to get in a place, if you don't feel that the guidance is sufficient, don't look out. That's not the case. You should definitely try. Uh, these days, being the age of the internet that is, majority of the information about the people who are leaders in their field is available. Corresponding with them is easy, right? Dropping somebody a LinkedIn chat, of course, well drafted in a proper manner, not badgering them, of course, but that would elicit responses from them. I've had so many students who want guidance who reach out to me. And if, of course, if I can, I do try and help them out as much. So that is definitely an option. Your generation is coming up in the age of AI. AI as a tool is absolutely essential. The volume of work that we used to do, or what our seniors used to do when they used to sit with a notepad and look at documents and documents, doing the diligence in a data room, a physical data room, which progressed to us doing it in a virtual data room, streamlining the processes, has got much, much more easier with AI coming through. Don't rely on AI to do your work, but use AI as a tool to assist you in doing the work, right? So that is something what students should definitely focus on. And tomorrow, probably a lawyer who is not equipped with AI will be replaced as opposed to a lawyer who can use AI to his advantage. AI is not there to replace you, but it can assist you. So that is something to bear in mind. And yeah, as far as mentorship goes, help is always available. Every law firm, I'm sure, has a mentorship program. Immediately, you probably would be paired up with a person who's a couple of years your senior, who would probably hold your hand in the initial first few years, and then you sort of take it up as you go.
So thank you, sir. Your advice is basically just go get into the flow, get into the workforce first. You will find mentorship.
Yes, because looking for mentorship at the stage when you don't really know what you need is also a arrow in the dark, right? You won't really know what you want unless you actually are there doing it, facing an issue, and then trying to come up with a solution.
Absolutely, sir. So now moving deeper into the capital markets domain,
Hmm.
can you shed some light on how the work differs if you're advising the issuer company versus the BRLM, the book running lead manager side?
Okay, work in terms of what a lawyer does, largely from a macro perspective, doesn't really change. On a deal, I'll be a company counsel, somebody else will be the merchant bankers counsel. There's a high probability on the next deal, the roles will be reversed. The thing that we need to look out for that unlike M&A, unlike disputes, the lawyers on a capital market transactions are not at loggerheads. End result is for everybody to reach the end line, which is getting the company listed or achieving fundraising objective. In the meantime, during that process, you have to look out for your client's interests. If it's a company which is a private company who's never achieved listing or has not really been exposed to that kind of nuances, it may require some in-house cleanup. Your audit processes, your secretarial processes, those would require cleanups. Whether you have documentation for each and every agreements, requirements, your business aspects of it. That is where the company counsel would come in, hold the hand of the company before it officially kicks off the listing process, get things in order, get your house in order before you start with the diligence aspect of it. And of course, then the diligence done by both the councils on the material aspects of a company's entire being is largely the same. From a merchant banker's perspective, now merchant banker is essentially an outsider. Yes, they are responsible for getting the company listed, dealing with the regulator, approaching their investor base, and keeping their good name in the market intact. They also take on liability because the regulator depends on the merchant banker to conduct diligence and to verify that everything is good to go. Whatever requires to be disclosed is disclosed, which is why they rely heavily on the merchant banker council. There is a process of certifications, there are process of agreements, confirmations taken from each parties, which is probably what a differing role is. A merchant banker council would have to ensure that its clients' interests are looked out for. Therefore, the approach changes, your thought process changes. Whereas you would want, in as a company council, you would want to facilitate the process more smoothly. You would want to eliminate the obstructions. A merchant banker council would want to ensure that those ob- obstructions are documented. those risks are bought out, those disclosures are made. If there is a hiccup somewhere, that discussion with the regulator is had, all of those processes. Largely identifying red flags, putting them on paper in a manner which is giving complete coverage to the fact, but yet not going overboard, that maintaining that fine line, that is where the refined lawyering comes in. So the company counsel has the responsibility of drafting an offer document. The merchant banker counsel has the responsibility of reviewing the offer document. So it's a maker checker method where one does it and the other double checks it. That's largely the differentiation in the role. And of course, you always advise your client basis your role, certain reps, warranties, certain confirmations, all of that.
And so, is there any difference in the due diligence that is done in capital markets versus that would be done in other type of transactions?
Yes, 100%. For an M&A transaction, the level of detailing may or may not be, it's not really regulated by a specific regulator or a set of laws, right? You would diligence it basis market trends, basis your commercial objectives, but you may take some materiality stance. The DD report for a M&A diligence is mostly based out of what are the red flags, what licenses are not in place, what needs to be rectified, what are the loopholes which we found during the course of our diligence. Yes, at the end of the day, when you diligence a company, the aspects of the company remain largely the same. How much in depth do you really go into is what probably becomes different between capital markets and M&A transaction. On an M&A transaction also, whether it's a vendor DD or whether you are doing it on the buyer side, that depends, that changes the outlook of the diligence that you conduct. Both diligences are done in pretty much similar detail, if that is the question, but the output may be very different. Whereas you create a DD report for your client, for them to be taking an informed call about what are the risks of me making that investment, and then covering those risks by taking certain contractual representations, indemnities, etc. In a capital markets role, you have to think about the liability that can come through from investors at large. So translating that diligence findings into an offer document and then working within the framework that SEBI has established is probably what is different in the diligence approach of both the practices. I'm sure there are more finer details, but I won't bore you guys with those finer details for now.
So now, could you share any particular experience or lesson that had a lasting impact on your journey as a lawyer?
Lasting impact. There have been too many, yeah, but I probably won't be able to pinpoint one as such. The interactions with clients, whom lawyers always, tend to think that we know what we are talking about, but that may not always be the case. That kind of understanding with these sophisticated investors when they come through, when they ask you a question which has already been thought about by them, and you have to be, quick and ready to be able to address their query, keeping in mind what could be the rationale as to why that question is being asked to you. That is the game. That is the game that you have to be adept at. So that learning comes from variety of experiences that you get through during the journey. But yeah, I can't really pinpoint one specific instance which I want to highlight. It's been a plethora of instances as such.
So now the opposite question of that. What
Yeah.
what mistakes do you see juniors making both in their work and in their career decisions that you could highlight and we can avoid?
First and foremost, when we hire somebody, or even if we've hired somebody and we're evaluating them, legal competence, of course, is a given. But I may still be okay with somebody not being really that smart, as long as their attitude towards work and their ability to learn, understand, and not repeat mistakes or learn from their mistakes is there. Predominantly, it is your attitude towards work and you being willing to put in that hard work is what will get you across. We hire, and this I can probably say for all law firms, we hire, say, 20 people for one team. By the time 3 years end, that number of 20 gets reduced to 3 to 4, right? There's a reason why there is so much attrition in law firm circuits. Some practices, yes, some practices, no, but largely the case. People join law firms from the perspective that A, it may look good on my CV. This can open doors for me when I want to do corporate, whether I want to, do UPSC later, join judiciary later, give the higher judiciary exam later. This is something which may help me. And sure, if that is the perspective, give it a shot. Do try it out for a couple of years. Nobody's going to hold that against you. But when you are actually within a law firm circuit, and if the intention is to stick around for a longer time, idea is for you to give it your all. The concept that I hear mostly from my senior associates when they talk about the juniors and the feedback that they give us is that ownership of transaction. It's not my transaction, it's not your transaction, it's not somebody else's, right? At the end of the day, it is our transaction. So you have to have ownership of it. If somebody has given you a piece of work, you have done that, but you see that the team is struggling with 10 different things. Raising your hand and taking up a little more is appreciated. Those are the smaller, softer aspects of an associate's life that they need to be very, very particular about. Meeting your timelines, meeting your deliverables, and the expected quality of the output that is, commensurate with the quality of the law firm that you're working for. That is important. Follow instructions. If you don't understand what is expected of you, ask. Any senior would be happy to take 25 extra minutes to explain something or re-explain something to a junior rather than redoing their work when the output that has been given to them is not up to the mark. So that's how you learn. That's how their life also becomes easier. And meticulousness is something which is very important, right? The way people draft emails, the way if you've drafted a memo, read it, double read it, do a grammar check. You've got so many tools at your disposal. A simple spell check goes a long way. There have been very embarrassing instances, right? I'm sure you guys would have also heard of them, that people have really screwed up spellings in such a manner that it just comes across as unintelligent, which should not be the case. So those softer aspects needs to be focused more. You would land up in a highly competitive environment with people with differing personalities. You would have a loud-spoken person on the floor as opposed to a very meek, calm, quiet one as well. Where you fit in into that category is yours. Who you have a relationship to gel with, to understand with in the workspace is up to you. So you have to navigate all of those aspects, yet continue to deliver on the professional front. Those are the few things which you learn over a period of time. But as long as your attitude towards work is to give it your all, that is all that's expected. See, we also understand that the young generation that's coming in would want to have a little bit of work-life balance, if I may call it. And yes, it's appreciated. All of us want that, and we've also been through that rigor. The idea is work comes first. So if there are uh, engagements with families, plans with friends, which sometimes, if they need to take a backseat, you have to be ready for that. Yeah. Won't always be the case. It's not like we work 7 days a week, all weekends are working, we're working till 2:30 in the night every day. That's not the case. And we are also cognizant about the fact that somebody needs downtime. But there will be times when there will be stretching burning the midnight oil, stretching yourself a little thin across. You have to be put up for that. Otherwise, law firm probably would not be the place for you. A more comfortable life, if that is your requirement, then you should reconsider what is it that you end up with. Those are the mistakes that associates do when they land up in a law firm, and that to a how do I put it, a high intensity work like a corporate law firm. They get disillusioned very quickly. The concept of burnout, that is very infamous in the legal circles. What is burnout? You probably had expectations of a life, but you're not really ready to put in the effort to be able to get there. That can be a bit of a problem. So manage your expectations early on. And as I tell all my juniors, it's that first 10 years. Those first 10 years, if you see it through, not only does life get better, you're you were no longer directionless. So I may not be able to put it in words exactly how, but I think you get the drift. So that is something that young associates, young lawyers joining law firms should look out for. Because jumping around after, say, 3 years of doing something like capital markets and then doing in-house may or may not really be to your advantage, because that's a completely different skill set. So bear that in mind before you jump into the world of catbots or corporate law firm for that matter. It's equally tough for the corporate teams also. It's not just catbots.
So just building on what you've said, these were the key mistakes that juniors make. So my question here is, what is the mindset and what are the skills that we at this generation of lawyers should focus on development? Second question, how you as a senior lawyer would assess juniors or assess interns? What do you exactly look for?
Okay, so brevity being the soul of it is absolutely essential for a lawyer, in my view. Unless you are a litigating lawyer where you need to really elaborate on your arguments and probably drive home the same point by harping on it multiple times, right? From a corporate side of it, life is different. Be circumspect, be succinct in your words, the words you use, communicate more effectively, more clearly, clarity of thought. If I want to say A, B, C, I will say A, B, C. I don't need to say A, B, C, but also D, E, F, maybe E, F, G also. That defeats the purpose. Clarity of thought, be concise, communicate effectively. This is on emails, in the way you draft things, in your output, your memorandums, whatever it is. Your ability to be able to research and be updated with law is honestly a given. Unlike a litigation practice where you have to research a lot about judgments and case laws and all of those, that may not really be applicable in a corporate setup. But here you need to be more aware of the precedents in terms of agreements, in terms of what may have happened on preceding transactions. So there is an element of research involved here as well. It may not be judicial pronouncements, but it would still have you looking up, preparing tables, notes, comparatives of precedents that have happened. So ability to research for an output of an answer as to what is prevalent in the market, and then the way you communicate with clarity of thought. Those are the two things that I think we would look forward for an associate, which would set them apart from the rest. Hard work, attitude, I've already covered. That is a given. But these two aspects are something that people can focus on. Yeah.
And so, how do you, for example, if we are an intern and there are some firms like, for example, KCO has a one internship policy based on what I have seen. So, how do you, as an intern, make your mark in a team? You get 1 month, that too, for example, if it's December, you get the last week, nobody's in office. You get 2 to 3 weeks. How do you
Hmm.
make your mark?
Honestly, Krish, I've never really thought of internships to be a way of getting your foot in the door. That is a wrong way to look at internships perspective. The way when we hire people, of course, there can always be, see, again, we get so many interns over the course of the entire year, right? Very, very difficult for us to assess everybody's capability, their attitude, their abilities, whether somebody is smart enough or not, in a very short span of time. Also, it depends what is the nature of the transaction. I cannot really delegate work to my intern at a crucial juncture of a transaction. So there will be other aspects through which we will evaluate interns. Now, if I'm getting 100 interns on an average in 1 year, I'm sure probably more than that, but just for a number, we would probably be able to identify 2 to 3 interns out of them who would really, really appreciate and would probably want to see again by giving them a second internship to try and see whether we can give them a PPA. But that is not our primary source of recruitment. Primary source of recruitment still remains going to colleges or applications that we receive, so on and so forth, even for laterals, so to speak. So internships are more to give you an opportunity to see that this is the life that you may expect. And yes, it looks sort of glamorous from the outside, may not be the case once you're there, once you're, burning the midnight oil, uh, at your desk nonstop late in the evenings. So the idea is for you to get a bit of an experience, a bit of a taste as to what's there on the other side, rather than the other way around. So something that we do at KCO is we give everybody an option of making a presentation at the end of the internship, right? Now, that presentation can sometimes be a differentiating factor. Of course, you would have also had to deliver on whatever your seniors would have given you during that period of internship to see whether you were quick on the uptake, to see whether you were diligent enough to get things done correctly. And your seniors would also be cognizant of the fact that you're a law student and still an intern and not really a qualified lawyer who does not really have experience for them to give you simple mundane tasks. But how effectively do you communicate? Your attitude, your personality, those are the softer aspects as well that come shine through. For you to be able to leave a mark on the seniors that you worked with or the team that you worked with in a very short span of time is absolutely challenging. Nothing taken away from the fact. But there are aspects that you can consider. You can follow up with your seniors once your internship is done to ensure that they've submitted a review. Feedback is something that is appreciated. If you voluntarily ask for feedback after you've given somebody a product and they've had the chance to review that product, asking for instructions, being meticulous. These are pretty much the same things that what we would look for in an associate is what an associate would probably be impressed with when they look at an intern's work. So those are the few things. But again, don't consider internships to be the mode to get a foothold in the door of a law firm. If you've done internships in, say, 3 to 4 big law firms of a particular area, be it corporate, cap marks, competition, whatever it may be, that in your CV would reflect very well when you actually make an application for a job. Yes, big law firms sometimes do have a select set of law schools that they go to. Are the opportunities equal for everybody? Answer is no. Does that mean you stand at a lesser chance of getting in? The answer is no to that as well. For example, in Bombay, we have some law schools where students can intern for a longer period of time because they happen to be located in Bombay, right? And their colleges are in the morning, and we have that long internship perspective also. So they are at an advantage, yes, but does that always translate into a job? Answer to that is no as well. Even if you don't get to a law firm or a big law firm initially, trying your hand at a corporate or trying your hand at a smaller setup is what is more appreciated rather than you just randomly shooting your CV to a partner that you found on LinkedIn. So, it's become so synonymous that the second a law student would send a LinkedIn request to any partner, and the second you accept it, even if that person is in the final year, fourth year, there's an immediate follow up, automated message, which, and we also understand that everybody is really trying their hard to get through. But that's not where you would really find success. The chances of that translating into something is really insignificant. So try and intern more, write as much as you can actually. You may not really be an expert in fields like capital markets, but there are ancillary areas of law that you can talk about. Put out research papers, try getting some publications. Mooting was a big thing when I was in law school. I'm not really sure if that is still the case. I'm sure it must be. But people sort of associate mooting with if you eventually want to go into litigation is where you should be mooting, which is not the case. Mooting does give you a lot of confidence to be able to present yourself in front of a larger crowd, which is an absolute requirement for every professional. It gives you the ability to research and have an in-depth knowledge of what you're going to be presenting. So those softer aspects can be developed during law school, which can translate into a more effective internship. बहुत ज्ञान दे दिया यार मैंने. I don't know if people would really
No,
be
no,
able
sir.
to
Actually,
follow that.
thank you for this perspective because हम हमेशा internships को ऐसे ही देखते हैं कि अरे convert कर रहा है.
Yeah, and
And
HR also understands that. But ये सोचिए ना how many internship applications from across the country, across offices, across practice areas do we get? Evaluating everybody and in very short period of time and getting that converted into a job offer is very, very difficult. Because at that stage, your academics, how you perform, all of that is also not really brought into question. Whereas when we do go to law schools for recruitment, that's one of the basis for shortlisting candidates, apart from the fact that they must have had internships, moots, authoring papers, so on and so forth. So yeah, I think your day zeros are more important than internships is what I would say. But boost up your CV by majority of internships. If not for anybody else, do it for yourself. There's no point trying to impress somebody, getting a job, and then realizing this is not what I want to do. And then in the hindsight, you see you wasted 2 years. So use internships as a mode of evaluating whether this is what you want. So work in companies, work in their legal teams as well, have litigation experiences, work in law firms. Try as much as you can in those 3 to 5 years, whichever course you're in, before you finally take a call that this is what I want to pursue.
So thank you for that perspective. Now, two questions that I have from viewers. If you were an associate today, how would you approach work differently? And second, sir, how would you get into in-house by doing capital markets? Like you worked at a law firm in cap marks for some years. Are there
Hmm.
in-house opportunities post that?
There are. It may not really be in the legal teams of uh, multinationals, so to speak. But on the flip side, all the major investment banks would be ready to hire you at a short notice. The work that they outsource, if they can also get somebody in their internal teams to, have a double check method for them to ensure that their liability is getting limited, is always beneficial. So all the top banks, the top foreign banks, domestic banks would be more than happy to take people. And we actually do have a lot of colleagues who eventually move on to such roles. Uh, at the end of the day, capital markets is not robotics or engineering, which is very different from any other field of law. Contract law 101 is applicable here also equally. Practicality of corporate finance is applicable here as well. The only probably difference is that an understanding of corporate finance is at a more advanced level in a capital market practice. So therefore, the role that you'd want to, you know, uh, delve into post that would probably be a little more tailored for that. So banks are always an option. Uh, Alternatively, even M&A roles, in-house M&A roles for large corporates uh, are always an option for capital market lawyers, because they would always need people from more of a compliance perspective, as well as from a perspective of future fundraising, handling all of that data, all of that transactions. So transaction management is essentially same. So your ability to transfer that skill set is fairly easy. You may not be ending up doing the exact same work, but whatever role that you can delve into would fairly be you'll fairly be equipped to be able to handle that. And as an associate, what I would do differently, I don't know. I mean, differently as opposed to what? I somehow still feel that I work like an associate on most days. So, um, as an associate, I think at the cost of repetition, taking feedback from your seniors is more important, which would help really pull yourself up to the next level. As an associate, and maybe it comes with maturity and with passing of time, but as an associate, sometimes if you're doing something for the first time, if something has been given to you for the first time, there is this inherent nature of procrastinating it or trying to, shirk away from it. If a transaction has 10 elements and I've done 5 of them many times, that's my comfort zone. I'll always try and do that 5 things rather than do the other 5 things which I've never done before. That is a mentality that needs changing. The more you do things outside your comfort zone is the more that you develop as a lawyer. So as an associate, that is probably one thing that I would do.
If you were in law school today, what practice area would you choose and why? Would it still be cap marks?
Okay, so it's this one is fairly personal. I happened to do the 2007 Surana corporate law moot, and we luckily we won that moot, and I got the orator and all of that. So that is when I realized that the nuances of Companies Act actually attracts me. Even though I'm standing in front of a mock bench and arguing, but the litigation aspect of it, all my internships, by the way, have always been litigation internships. I've had one internship at KCO in 2007 or 8, but apart from them, all of them have been litigation experiences, because coming from a business family, for us, law means going to court, right? The aspects of law firm, and again, coming from a smaller city, we never really had that exposure of big law firms, big corporates. We would only hear about it in law school. But when I had joined GNLU also, I was the second batch of GNLU, right? So we didn't really have an established, passed out alumni for us to get that guidance. We just had one batch before us who were probably as clueless as we were. So that was a different struggle for us. But yeah, I found that pull of understanding the corporate law aspect a little more lucrative, more attractive. So yeah, some field related to that is what I would end up. It may not be capital markets, could be M&A, could be general corporate. Competition also was very interesting back then. I've done a few courses in my LL.M days also on merger control through competition law. So that's again a very interesting aspect. But yeah, I think those would be one of the subjects that I would take. If people are to look at it from a perspective as to what is the growth in the future, that will be a difficult question to answer. Capital markets, as well as corporate, by very nature, are cyclical. There will be years when when the markets are down, right? And there will be years when the corporate team has not had that great an year because the markets are up. So sometimes it's inversely proportionate as well. That does happen, but that shouldn't be your criteria of choosing a practice area. Get into something that you like, otherwise the next 15, 20, 30 years will be very difficult.
Actually, that was my final question to you. How do you see the future of cap marks as a practice, and how would AI impact this practice? Because we are seeing a lot of AI tech doing the repetitive work, like it can have the capability to do that at the junior levels at least. So, first, how do you see the impact of AI on this practice? And finally, what is the future of this practice?
Future of this practice is bright, if I may say so, because if you were to compare the penetration of the securities market in a more mature market like, say, America, where about 90 odd percent of people have demat accounts, bank accounts, so on and so forth, as opposed to India, where that scope of penetration is still a long, long mile to go. That being said, broadening our horizons, our corporates going uh, multinational, their requirements of, with the growth of India, the requirement of capital also grows. To that effect, I see the practice growing in leaps and bounds. The regulator has also had a change of attitude in phases, from being a very strict regulator, always looking at you from an eye of suspicion, to becoming a more friendlier regulator with the ease of doing business, making regulations, relaxations, listening to the problems that India Incorporated has, is something that has helped capital markets grow. It has helped us bring a lot of foreign investors to the table. Now, instead of chasing capital, we are also chasing the quality of capital, whether it's coming from the big mutual funds, the big private equity investors, the big sovereign funds. That is what I see the future of capital markets to be. It is a long way to go for us to become, so to say, saturated. And honestly, still in India, there are about 6 to 7 law firms that still do hardcore capital markets, or are aspects of a full service law firm. So there are opportunities for people to branch out and develop this for more niche areas. You've got new products being introduced very regularly, such as REITs, InvITs, which are a fairly recent phenomena of the last decade, and they've taken up and how. So we have capital markets lawyer who, while doing general capital markets, have now gone into further niche areas and have become specialists in REITs and InvITs. Right? So they've carved out a name for themselves within an already specialized practice. They've had a super specialization as well. So those opportunities are not ceasing anytime soon. With the gift city coming up and with the options that provide, uh, it's just too vast the horizon. It's uncharted territory, and I think there's a lot for everybody to work around and grow with. I think I missed the second part of the question. What was that one?
My second part was, is there going to be an impact of AI on the number of entry level
Yeah.
jobs in this practice area?
So as we stand today, each and every law firm is toying with the idea of AI, either already adopting accepted models, accepted tools, or developing their own. Us at Khaitan, we've sort of had a hybrid approach to this. We've developed our in-house AI called KAI, Khaitan AI called Kai. And so these large language modules that are available publicly, as well as indigenously developed by firms or by service providers, will more help people in processing the large volume of data rather than doing their work for themselves. I mean, yes, getting a memorandum or an email proofread or making it concise with the help of AI as a tool is one thing. You still can't do the job of a lawyer from an AI perspective. What is right, what is wrong, and AI still will not be able to help you. How much to say, how much not to say, what to hide, what not to hide, or what to omit and what not to omit is still something that requires a lawyer's oversight. So yes, probably it can become a tool in aiding the associates in doing diligence or in double checking things to ensure that there is no gap, that they did not missed out on anything. But it's still in a very, very initial development phase, is what I can say. Yes, you can probably cross refer an agreement very easily. You can probably feed in 10 different agreements and get a summary or a comparative table of each types of clauses and the different stands taken. But that is only to give you an overview. When you are actually negotiating it with the other side, your thought processes, your understanding of what is market practice, what is the commercial intent behind asking for a confirmation or not giving a confirmation, all of that is still something that lawyer will need to fine tune. So it's a tool. Let's take it at that. Let's not think about it being something to replace your work with. That's not what AI is intending to do.
So thank you for that answer. And any advice you would like to leave us law students with?
इतने तो एडवाइस ही दे रहा हूँ मैं कब से और क्या एडवाइस दूंगा my advice is enjoy the journey. If you're still in law school, trust me, you will miss these days. So make the most of it. The life that's waiting for you out there is not going away anywhere, and everybody will land up on their feet largely. So do enjoy your law school days. Have a more focused approach. When you're actually studying something, try and understand and learn it rather than with the intention of just passing the exam. I know it's easier said than done. Uh, but yeah, that may help. That may just be the differentiating factor between the person next to you who tomorrow could very well be your competition. So yeah, have a broader outlook and enjoy yourself.
So thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure law students are going to
Pleasure.
watch this and have clarity on a lot of questions that they had regarding this practice area, and it may even ignite their interest in this practice area. So really thank you for joining me here and sharing your perspective.
I would invite students to participate in the GNLU course. I know we are constrained to keep it limited to a select number of students, but do try throw your hat in the ring, prepare a bit about it, read up a bit, because information about capital markets or security law practice is available out there. It's not really unattainable. So do all of that, and then of course please do try. The intention of us undertaking that course is to only inform and teach something which otherwise is not taught in school. We're just trying to bridge a gap. That's all that we're trying to do.
Thank you, sir.
It's been a pleasure, Krish. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Wonderful talking to all of you. Cheers.